He's big, he's bad, he's probably been terrorising your local gaming stores over the last couple of weeks. And if you've been to any sorts of events, you probably find that he's somehow made his way into over a quarter of the rosters, whether people are playing Cabal or not. Yes, it is of course Malekith that we're talking about today, and here are my top tips on how you can deal with this new big bad of Marvel Crisis Protocol. Hey guys, Rich from Rich Big Gaming, and yes, today we're talking all about Malekith. This is probably at least the second, maybe the third video that we've done talking about this, but what's prompted this is I've seen a lot of comments in various groups and on Discord channels, Facebook and things like that over the past couple of weeks, calling for everything from he's absolutely fine to he should be an 8 threat to we should ban him from the game, and if AMG don't do it, ban him as a community, which I just think is utter nonsense. He is a 7 threat character, and you need a 7 threat character to feel like they are 7 threat. Just because Dormammu at 8 threat isn't amazing doesn't mean that he shouldn't be. So I actually think he's probably balanced for what he costs, and I actually think there's quite a lot of ways to be able to deal with Malekith. So let's first of all look at what makes Malekith so good. Well, first of all, he's on that large base and he has a medium move, so he gets around the board very, very easily. He also has amazing action economy because of that ferocity, which is basically a pseudo charge, but he can only do his builder off the back end of it. I say can only do his builder. It's a 7 dice energy attack with a pierce, so it's not a bad builder by any stretch of the imagination. But he also gets a throw off the back end of it for good measure if he does damage. But he is reliant on doing damage. He's a very, very power hungry character. So let's have a look then at a couple of ways as to how we can potentially stop that, because that's really what Malekith does in the game. He gets around the board very, very quickly. He murders people very, very well. He's got that ability that lets him, I think it's called Cloak of Shadows, is it? That basically lets him convert any failures that he rolls into crits before the critical roll step, so it means that he gets to add dice in for those failures as well, and it's unlimited. So if you roll 6 failures and he's got 6 power, he can add 6 crits in. So they're really the things that he's got, right? They're the big things that he has. He's got a little bit of defensive tech as well in Conqueror of the 10 Realms, so people can't re-roll dice against him, but that's what he's got. He's got a big health pool, but he is by no means the be-all and end-all in this game, and there are definitely ways that you can stop him in his tracks. So, first and foremost, conditions, okay? Characters who can dish out special conditions. I'm not going to run through a list of every single character that can do them, but conditions really, really hurt Malekith. When you have a 7 threat character, everything by proxy just costs more. The cost of Malekith moving for medium up the board is costing a lot more than a character who only costs 2 threat, who moves medium up the board, right? So you want to make sure that as the player playing Malekith, you get the absolute most out of every single action that he takes. As the player playing against Malekith, you want to make sure he gets the least amount from each one of those actions. So conditions and special conditions are a fantastic way of being able to do that. First of all, slow. Slow is really, really nice on Malekith. Not for Malekith, but when you're coming up against him. It does mean that he just doesn't get around the board anywhere near as quickly. He's still on a large base, so he's still going to be able to get from point to point, but it does mean that that ferocity, maybe he doesn't manage to get it off. Maybe he has to take a move first and then has to do his charge, which is huge. He's basically wasting one of those actions on a move. So that's, for me at least, that's really a really nice one to put on him. Now, unfortunately, he is immune to Hex and Stun, which would have been 2 great conditions to be able to put on Malekith. But outside of them, Shock is another fantastic one to be able to get on Malekith. And the reason why is, when you include the fact that he can count failures with Cloak of Shadows, he's counting 5 from 8 sides of the dice as successes. 2 of which of those allowing him to add an extra dice in. So whilst it's only removing one attack die for him, it actually really does hamper the amount of damage that he can do. It means that Blade of Midnight all of a sudden goes from a 7 dice builder down to a 6. Blood Boil becomes a 4 dice attack rather than a 5 dice attack. And lastly then, and this is the really big one, is Stagger. Now, you've seen me talk about how Malekith can work really nice, potentially in affiliations such as Winter Guard, maybe with Scarlet Witch beside him, or even in the Asgardians himself. And the reason why is he can get rid of special conditions and he can get rid of that Stagger. But putting a Stagger on Malekith is absolutely huge. Yes, he still may be able to get off a Ferocity, so he still may be able to get a move and an attack, but the fact that it's not going to be a move attack and then another attack off the back end of it, if you are limiting his actual actions that he can do per turn by 1, that is huge, absolutely huge. So having characters out there who can dish Stagger out, there's so many of them, and a lot of them are very splashable characters. So I would seriously look at characters who are really going to be able to dish out that Stagger condition, because they are going to hurt him a lot. Okay, so that's it for special conditions, and those special conditions I mentioned are really going to help you playing against Malekith. They're going to slow him down going around the board, so he potentially needs to use extra movement actions rather than being able to make 2 attacks per round. It's going to reduce his damage output with that shock, which is going to be really nice, and absolutely ruin his action economy if you can get a Stagger onto him. But he is still left with that Ferocity, and that's one of his biggest problems. One of the biggest problems for players that play against him, because even if you do all of those things, he can still in one round make a move and make an attack. So what can we do to potentially mitigate that Ferocity? And remembering, it's got an unlimited throw at the back end of the attack if it does damage, which more often than not, 7 dice with a Pierce, it's going to do some damage. So let's have a look at a couple of things that can really hurt Malekith when he makes those charges or pseudo charges. So first of all, I want to look at a couple of characters that have an ability. Trickster on Loki, and then you've also got Can't Catch Me on Quicksilver. Basically, somebody makes an attack into either of those characters, or they target them with an attack, and if they've got the power, for each of them it's 3, they get to make a short advance. Now, because Malekith's builder is only a range 2, a short advance is going to get you out of the way. You are guaranteed to be able to get out of the way. You've also got the card from, or the tactics card, sorry, Eye in the Sky, and this is one of the reasons why Shield are so good against Malekith, because basically Nick Fury gets to spend that card on anybody. Now, it's only once per turn, but if he's playing in Shield, it's a recyclable card, so you can do this multiple times. Malekith can only make 1 charge per turn, so actually it doesn't really matter. It's really nice way of getting around it. I also want to call out one other character who's really good and also very splashable as well. That is Ghost Spider, aka Gwen Stacy. She's got a amazing superpower called Lifesaver. When an enemy character targets another allied character with an attack within this character's line of sight and range 4, you may use this superpower. Push the targeted allied character towards this character short. So it basically does exactly the same thing that Loki's abilities and everybody else's can do, but it has to be towards Gwen. But all of these, and it's worth pointing out, all of these have the kicker on them that if then Malekith or whoever's making the attack can't make the attack, they get to make another action. So whilst he gets his full action back, he can't use that full action to make another charge because he's already used that charge. So he gets it all back, but for 2 power or 3 power on each of the characters, it is well worth it, and it turns off one of the biggest things that Malekith has in the game, because once you pull them outside of range 2, he then only has his Blood Boil, which is only it's a beam attack. It's a beam 4, I think I want to say, but it only generates 1 power. It's only 5 dice. It doesn't have the throw off the back end of it. Yes, it dishes out poison, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, for me, it's really, really good. Another one is going to be Mysterio, Quentin Beck. Now, he has an ability here, and there's a couple of others that have got it as well. Tricks and Traps. When an enemy character ends a movement within 3 of this character may use this superpower. Roll 4 dice. The enemy character suffers 1 damage for each crit and wild rolled. If this superpower deals at least 1 damage, this character may advance short. Now, this one is less guaranteed because you have to do a damage with it. So 4 dice, any crit, any wild, it's about a 50-50, I think, give or take. Maybe slightly less. So it's a bit riskier. However, this doesn't give him his action back. So if Malekith decides that he's going to go and target a Mysterio, or as I mentioned, a couple of other characters that do this as well, Malekith gets to use his movement part, but the moment he finishes his movement, Mysterio gets to kick in with Tricks and Traps. And then if he moves outside of range of Malekith just doesn't get to make the attack. So, yeah. Now, if somebody else is in range, he can attack them because he hasn't actually announced his target yet. But if there's nobody else around, he loses that, and it's huge to his action economy. Absolutely huge. Mysterio also, by the way, does also dish out stagger, or can potentially dish out stagger as well with his curtain calls. So yeah, maybe one that's worth putting in your roster. Okay, so that's ferocity dealt with. We've got some really nice examples there as to how we can turn off that pseudo charge that he's got. But what about Cloak of Shadows? So Cloak of Shadows is that reactive ability that basically lets him spend X amount of power to change X number of failures into crits and then explode them failures as well, which increases his damage output significantly, but can also make him much, much harder to kill than that sort of falls across the board may first imply. So unfortunately with this one, there aren't really any sort of generic things. It's really down to individual characters who have some particular tech on their character card. So let's start off and look then first of all at Domino. Domino is a really, really good character coming up against Malekith, and mainly the reason for it is she's got the innate superpower Things Tend to Go My Way. When this character is attacking or defending, enemy characters do not roll additional dice for crit results in their attack or defense rolls. So whilst we don't turn off the ability completely, what we're stopping is the ability to add in more dice. So if he's rolling 5 dice, the maximum amount of damage that he's going to be able to do within a roll is 5, and it probably won't be 5. Equally, with defensive rolls, he's not able to add in any extra crits for those defensive rolls as well, meaning that it just means that it's a little bit easier to take him down. Like I say, it doesn't turn it off completely, but it definitely does help. Speaking of turning it off completely, Mystique is a really, really good character against Malekith. She's got that shape-shifting innate ability, which basically means during her activation, characters or other enemy characters cannot use any reactive superpowers or any reactive tactics cards. So first of all, Cloak of Shadows just gets turned off completely. There is nothing Malekith can do about it. But also, it turns off any other tactics cards that your opponent may have, which may stop Malekith being hit, and also superpowers as well. So if he's in Avengers, for example, Steve cannot bodyguard him. If he's got a Venom in his squad, Venom cannot lethal protector him. If Scourge is in there, Scourge can't use sacrifice. So it makes sure that if she wants to go for Malekith, she gets to go for Malekith, no questions asked. So yeah, Mystique's a really, really nice counter in there as well. And then the last one that I want to talk about, I did say that there was a character who benefits from that Cloak of Shadows, and it is your boy Ghost Rider. So Ghost Rider has that ability, Wicked Judgment. It costs 2 power, and then after an attack made by a character within range 3 of this character is resolved, if that attack targeted another allied character, this character may use this superpower. the attacking character suffers 1 damage for each crit in its attack roll. Now, we've had it confirmed, and we already knew because of Domino's probability manipulation that that includes any failures that he has chosen to count as crits. So if Malekith has a really, really good roll, taking out a 3-threat, a 2-threat character and does, oh, there's the 93 damage that Malekith does, and, you know, there's 7 crits and failures in there that he's counting for 2 power, Ghost Rider can do 7 damage against him. It's one that often catches your opponent out a little bit because it's a react, or at least it catches me out. It's a reactive thing, and I always forget about it. But yeah, Ghost Rider I think is a little secret weapon against Malekith, who can be really, really good. So yeah, that's a little extra one for you in there. So just quickly before we jump on to the next part, it would be remiss of me, as we mentioned a couple of characters here, to not loop back around and just talk a little bit about something else that Loki does that can really, really hurt Malekith. We already spoke about how he has that trickster ability where he gets to scoot away and it, spoils Malekith's day when it comes to his ferocity, but he also has a innate ability called God of Mischief. And on his healthy side, this basically means that any enemy character, while they're within range 4 of Loki, so a big old bubble, enemy characters have to spend 1 power before using an active or reactive superpower. So if he wants to do his ferocity, he has to pay 1 before he pays the 2, meaning that, he's can't just rely on the power that he gets per round to be able to do that. And if you can do that round 1 against him, that's really, really nice. He also then just gets that little bit better. So, more often than not, when there's a Loki on the board and it's an attrition-based team, they will target Loki down first and foremost because he just turns off so many things. On his flip side, that God of Mischief gets even better. So it does all the other things that we spoke about earlier. However, it also means that those same characters within range 4 do not roll additional dice for crit results with anything. So on dodges, on attacks, and defenses. So again, it doesn't stop him from using any of his abilities, but it turns off how potent they are quite considerably, and it does tax him. It does mean that he's got to spend 1 extra power. And Malekith is a very, very power-hungry boy, and he's got lots of things that he wants to spend it on. He's one of the few characters I think that really likes his big spenders. So just being able to, charge him that little bit more for the bottom half of his card is going to be really, really nice. So we've talked about ferocity, we've talked about what special conditions, we've talked about Cloak of Shadows and various different ways that we can mitigate, if not just turn them off completely. What else have we got out there that's really, really good? Well, Bodyguard. Any sort of Bodyguard ability, whether it's the sort of traditional Bodyguard or the pseudo Bodyguard where you're measuring from the target rather than the character, all that kind of stuff. Anyone you've got in your roster that can take a punch from another character and you can decide where Malekith is targeting really, really hurts him, because it means that you can save a potential character who's really important to you, or you can just move that attack onto a lesser threat character, or you can actually move it to a character that maybe has some really nice defensive tech. Steve Rogers, for example, he's got some very, very good defensive tech, and even Malekith is going to really struggle to be able to take him down, in the one attack that he can do with a lot of other characters. So Bodyguards and being able to manipulate where Malekith or who Malekith is going to be attacking are really, really good. And there's so many of them in the game now that, I'm not going to go through and list them all again, but, again, that could be a tactics card, Heroes for Hire, it could be Lethal Protector, it could be Sacrifice, or it could be a character, that has just a bodyguard or a pseudo bodyguard. So, the likes of Scourge, the likes of Steve Rogers, Luke Cage, Okoye, you've then got a little ankle biter in there as well now. So, yeah, there's lots of different options, and a lot of them are lower threat characters. So, definitely worth thinking about putting some bodyguard capabilities in your roster just to make sure that Malekith isn't taking out your primary threat for him on the board. So before we get into the final part of this video, where I am going to talk about crisis selection, I'm going to talk about squad selection in terms of, tall versus wide. I do want to give a shout out to two other characters who can really, really make Malekith have a bad day. And that, first of all, is Iron Fist. So we've already spoke about how being able to reduce his action economy, being able to reduce his damage output, giving him a slow, and all these sort of things can be really, really good. However, what's even better than that is just giving him an activated token. And if he doesn't have an activated token, you can give him the stagger condition. So obviously Iron Fist with the Iron Fist, it's that eight cost to nine power attack. You are probably going to be throwing Danny to the wolves, but actually using a 3-threat character to turn off an 7-threat character, is not a bad thing. And then you do have Doctor Strange, who I think is a really, really good character, really good counter to Malekith. Crimson Bands of Sitarak is really, really nice. So basically, he's going to get an auto stagger for 4 power, which is really good. But if he gets the hit crit wild combination, he just gives him an activated token as well, which is really good. Also, Bolts of Bedevilment, just pushing short if it deals damage, which again is probably going to be the case. So just a quick shout out to both of those two, because I think they're really, really good against Malekith. Okay guys, last couple of minutes of the video, I just want to touch upon squad selection and also crisis card selection as well. So let's start with this squad. It's the age-old tall versus wide. Which one do you want to go for? The thing you're probably going to be able to guarantee is Malekith is going to be tall. It's going to be 3, 4 at an absolute push, maybe 5 characters if it's a 20-threat game. But realistically, he's probably going to be running 3 or 4 characters per game. And what do you do to counter that? Well, this is just my opinion, but in those 100 or so games that I've played, the ones that I've lost are always against, or for the most part, against wider rosters or wider lists. Malekith seems to really struggle with them. He can't, he's such a big threat, but if you are spread across the board, then it's going to be really, really difficult for Malekith to be everywhere at once. It's just not possible for him. And the games that I've lost is where I've had to really think about, oh God, there's so much going on this side of the board, but I'm winning here with, Malekith can stand his own against 3 characters. But, if something else is going bad here and there's lots of points over this side of the board, he then has to flip over. And yeah, it's not the best scenarios for him. Something down the middle is where he wants to be, or something a bit more clumped together. So that would be my take on it. I would definitely say look at going wider rather than taller, because if you go tall and try and stand toe-to-toe with him, he's just going to knock you down. His damage output is so good and so consistent. I've come up against Double Hulks, I've come up against Brotherhood with Magneto and Juggernaut, and he absolutely stomps on all of them. The other one I heard was that, you want to go tall because his leadership triggers and so on and so forth. His leadership isn't affected by how many characters his opponent's got. It's all to do with how many characters he's got. If he's only three wide or 3 tall even, he can only ever trigger that leadership 3 times in a round. That's it. No more, no less. Doesn't matter if he dazes 7 of your characters. He can only ever trigger it 3 times because that's the restrictions. So, yeah, I think personally wider is better. They're the games that I've lost. Let's talk about crisis cards. What crisis cards are good? What crisis cards are bad? Let's start with ones that I personally think you want to avoid. These are the ones that I'm looking for when I'm playing as Malekith. First of all, Fear Grips. Having a hammer on him is just, it's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And because he gets 2 chances per dice of adding in a secondary dice, it's a 25% chance, right, that he's going to get a crit from that dice. He's got to pay power for the second one. Having a hammer on there is just, makes him even better. The other one is Alien Ship and Skull's Infiltrate. And the reason for those is they're single objectives. They're not particularly good. Mutant Extremist is still good for Malekith. But it's lower threat, so you do then get that option of it being, potentially 14 threat, which does limit his options quite a bit. He can still take a 3 and a 4 with him, but it does limit what he can do quite a little bit. And the other one, sorry, that he does really like is Research Station. It's just really, really good for him. On the secure side of things, the ones that I always look for, Cosmic Invasion, that extra power is really, really good. Demons Downtown, because it's down the middle of the board, and then Gamma Wave is also really, really nice for him. Being able to get off some of those beam attacks and hitting 2, 3, sometimes maybe even 4 is not only a great way of generating power for him, but because he can use his Cloak of Shadows on each of those beam attacks as well, he can dish out some really big damage. So they're the ones that you want to avoid. What can you look for? Again, think about the shape and where things are going to be positioned. So high scoring objectives, where there's lots of them for the extracts. Spider Infected, Struggle for the Cube, both really, really bad for Malekith. He does not like them at all. Struggle for the Cube less so compared to Spider Infected, but you know, if he's only got 3 characters in his roster, in his squad, and there's 5 Spider Infected, he can only ever score 3 of them at the absolute most. It also means that you can play into that idea of, you know, controlling the game, going for the VPs, moving, you know, keeping out of range of Malekith, making him use an action for a movement, right? That's really, really important to the action economy. And if he does get some cubes, it's going to do some damage on him as well. But they're the 2 that I would be looking for. And then for the secure side of things, whilst I mentioned obviously Demons, Gamma, and Cosmic Invasion are my favourites, I would also be looking to dodge intrusions. It's the other way on the board, but he doesn't mind spending a power to portal himself over. Ones that he doesn't like, Terrorising Cloud. Again, separated on either side of the board. It's very, very difficult for him to commit resources to both sides. Superpowered Scoundrels. This, again, is another one that is very, very spread out and really, really plays into Malekith's weaknesses. Because, you know, you want to be going 2 characters, maybe, you know, 2, maybe even 3 characters wider than him in some situations, and you can just swamp him. And, you know, it's a little bit like going back to the old school Sam spam type thing with him, or, you know, the Guardian spam, that sort of thing, for this. But yeah, that would be my advice. You know, try and keep it wide. Threat wise, the one that he probably struggles with the most is 14 threat. At 15 threat, the combination of Lockjaw, Malekith and MODOK on 15 threat Gamma is just absolutely brutal. So I would avoid that at all costs. But yeah, they're just my thoughts on what crises you should take and the sort of maps that you should be looking at. And there we go, guys. That is my tips and tricks on how you can beat Malekith in Marvel Crisis Protocol. But the overall takeaway is probably that you don't want to try and beat Malekith. You want to try and play around him. You want to hamper him. And, you know, you want to just score those VPs, because that's where you're going to win the game. Guys, if you have any of your own comments and suggestions, please leave them down in the comment section. Let's share the knowledge. I'm playing a lot of Malekith at the moment because he just fits into my playstyle. But I'm most definitely not winning every game. I think out of 100, I've probably won about 80 of them. So it's probably an 80%, you know, 75, 80% win rate. I see that as being more of my opponents don't know how to deal with him, as opposed to, you know, me just being so amazingly good at the game. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. If you have liked this video, please leave a like. It really, really does help. And if you want to support the channel even further, we do have our Patreon up and running. And a huge shout out to all of the Patreons who already support us over there. You really, really do make a difference, and you really do help with the day-to-day running of the channel. Also, go check out the Discord. It's pretty cool. There's all sorts of stuff on there now as well. And guys, as always, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.